The cab driver had just finished his night shift. He hadn't picked up any customers, so he decided to head home and catch some sleep before his next shift started. But then he noticed a woman sitting by herself on a bench not far from where he was. The woman was crying and looked very upset. The cab driver pulled over and asked her if she was all right. "Where to, madam?" he asked politely. The woman looked up and startled, then quickly wiped her tears and told him where to go. Throughout the ride, the woman remained silent, staring out the window. When they arrived at her destination, she got out of the cab without saying a word and hurried inside the building without paying the fare. The cab driver was confused and a little worried, but he shrugged it off and went back to his usual route. A few days later, though, he saw the same woman walking along the street and couldn't help but wonder what had happened to her. Little did he know that this chance encounter would change his life forever. The cab driver continued his daily routine, picking up passengers and driving around the city. But his thoughts kept drifting back to the mysterious woman and her unusual behavior. He couldn't understand why she had gotten into his cab that night or why she hadn't paid her fare. He tried to shake off these thoughts, but he couldn't help but feel curious and concerned about her well-being. One day, while driving, the cab driver passed by the same apartment complex where the woman had gotten out of his cab a few days earlier. He couldn't help but wonder if she was all right and if she had any plans to pay him the money she owed him. Suddenly, he got an idea. He turned the car around and headed towards the apartment complex, hoping to find the woman and settle the outstanding fare. As he approached the building, he saw a familiar figure standing in front of it. It was the woman from a few days earlier. She looked surprised to see him and started to back away, but the cab driver quickly called out to her. "Excuse me, miss," he said politely. "I hope you don't mind me asking, but I'm wondering how you are and if you plan on paying the fare you owe me." The woman hesitated for a moment, but then took a deep breath and turned back to face him. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said apologetically. "I completely forgot about my fare. Of course I'll pay you." With that, she reached into her purse and pulled out some cash, which she handed to the cab driver. "Here you go," she said. "Please accept this as payment for the fare." The cab driver was surprised by the amount of money she was offering him. It was much more than the fare he had quoted her. He looked at the woman questioningly, but she simply smiled and said, "It's all right. Please keep it as a tip." The cab driver was hesitant to accept such a generous tip, but the woman insisted, saying that it was the least she could do to show her appreciation for his service. He eventually agreed and thanked her for the tip. As the cab driver drove away from the apartment complex, he couldn't help but wonder who the woman was and why she had acted so strangely when he first met her. He thought about her unusual behavior, such as getting into his cab without saying a word and paying her fare, as well as her generous tip. He couldn't shake off the feeling that there was more to the woman than met the eye, and he couldn't help but wonder what secrets she was hiding. Despite his curiosity, the cab driver decided to let the matter go and focus on his job. He knew that it wasn't his place to pry into the personal affairs of his passengers, and he respected the woman's privacy. However, he couldn't help but think that their paths were destined to cross again someday. And as if fate had heard his thoughts, the cab driver's phone rang not long after. On the other end of the line was the woman from the apartment complex, and she was calling to ask for another ride. This time, she needed to go to the airport. The cab driver was surprised to receive her call, but he was happy to pick her up and take her to the airport. As he drove towards the airport, the cab driver couldn't help but wonder where the woman was going and what she was up to. He knew that she was a successful businesswoman, but he had no idea about the extent of her wealth or her connections. When they arrived at the airport, the woman got out of the car and turned to the cab driver. "Thank you for driving me here," she said. "Please accept this as a token of my appreciation." She handed the cab driver another envelope, which he accepted with gratitude. Inside, the envelope was a substantial amount of money, much more than what he would have earned for a typical ride. The cab driver was taken aback by the woman's generosity, and he tried to refuse some of the money, but she insisted that he keep it. "This is the least I can do for you," she said. "Please accept it." The cab driver knew that it was pointless to argue with her, so he simply thanked her and accepted the money. As he watched the woman disappear into the crowd of passengers, the cab driver couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder and fascination about her. He had no idea what she was up to, but he couldn't shake off the feeling that she was involved in something big. He wondered about her mysterious ways and couldn't help but feel drawn to her enigmatic personality. He knew that he may never see her again, but he couldn't help but hope that their paths would cross once again. Little did the cab driver know that this was just the beginning of his extraordinary journey. The moment he had picked up the woman from the hospital, his life had taken an unexpected turn, and he would never be the same again. The cab driver had no idea that the woman he had picked up from the hospital was actually a billionaire disguised in plain clothes. She was on the run from her enemies who wanted to steal her fortune, and she had chosen the cab driver as the one person she could trust to take her to a safe location. The cab driver had no way of knowing this, and he had simply done his job by driving her to her destination without asking too many questions. However, he had no idea that the woman, his enemies, were still looking for her, and that they would stop at nothing to find her and steal her money. The cab driver had unwittingly put himself and his family in danger by transporting the billionaire to safety, but he had no way of knowing that his life was about to change dramatically. The cab driver's wife and children were shocked and frightened when the men arrived at their house demanding to know where the billionaire was. The cab driver had tried his best to protect his family, but he had no match for the ruthless criminals who were determined to get their way. In the end, the cab driver was forced to reveal the billionaire's whereabouts, and the criminals left his house to go find her. The cab driver, his life was turned upside down when the billionaire's enemies showed up at his house looking for her. He had never been involved in anything like this before, and he was terrified of what might happen to him and his family. But, despite his fear, he had no choice but to cooperate with the police and help them track down the billionaire. As the cab driver and the police searched for the billionaire, they were led on a wild goose chase by her enemies who wanted to throw them off her trail. The cab driver's life was in constant danger as the criminals tried to silence him before he could lead the police to the billionaire. But the cab driver refused to give up, and he continued to work with the police to find the billionaire and bring her to justice. As the cab driver helped the police close in on the billionaire's enemies, he realized that he had put his life on the line to help her. But he also realized that he had made a difference in the lives of many people by bringing them to safety. The cab driver was hailed as a hero when the billionaire's enemies were finally caught and brought to justice. He had put his life on the line to help her, and he had succeeded in doing so. He was awarded a Medal of Honor for his bravery, and his family was given financial security. From that day on, the cab driver was known as the hero cab driver, and his story became a legend in the city. People would tell stories about the brave cab driver who had risked his life to help a billionaire, and his family would always remember him as a true hero. The cab driver had faced danger and uncertainty, but he had emerged as a true hero. He had saved the billionaire and her family and had become a legend in the city. His bravery and determination had inspired many people, and his story would continue to be told for generations to come.